The clock is ticking. We're 6 days away from the 2025 NFL Draft. We will break down the Vikings' needs, who they might be interested in, and the biggest strengths and weaknesses heading towards this season. Here's the fellas.
Happy Good Friday, everybody. Hopefully you are enjoying your evening wherever you are as we get closer to the NFL Draft. Tony Bell, this is a exciting time. The news has kind of dipped a little bit, or so we thought. We will get into that in just a moment. But the question that Tony and I would like to ask you who are watching our show, and thank you for doing so here on the official Purple SKOL Squad Show for Minnesota Viking fans. Very simple question. Who or what position do you want the Minnesota Vikings to address in the 2025 draft? So if you want to make it simpler, who's the guy you want first for the Vikings to draft? Is it a defensive tackle? Is it one of those terrific offensive linemen? Is it one of the two safeties that you've seen drawn to the Vikings in many mock drafts? We'll get into that a little bit later as well. What fits the Vikings best? Or I think we said this, Tony, right? And we'll get into this. The Vikings are a really good position right now because they can go best available player.
Right. Like I said, first time in years, they're actually not picking for need. It's literally a BPA draft because we covered a lot of holes in free agency.
So that could leave us to a lot of different names. I mean,
right.
Depending on how that board slides, and if the guys that whomever KOC or Kwesi or Flores has on top of their charts is already gone, or who they wanted, they could obviously trade back, stockpile some more picks since they only have 4 in this year's draft. Or who knows, they're in a position where maybe they trade collateral from next year to move up if there's a guy that they really, really want, like that running back guy that everyone's been talking about. But that's all possibilities. We'll get into that in a little bit. But once again, Tony, even though it's been, almost like a month since you and I sat here along with Torrey Holt doing a show, and we figured things have moved along, and it's J.J. McCarthy as the number 1 quarterback, and we're just waiting to see who the Vikings will add as a number 2. Well, Tuesday happened, Tony. Tuesday happened, and at his gazillion-dollar estate there at Malibu Beach with his dog Apollo, watching 2 dolphins in the Pacific Ocean, Aaron Rodgers once again threw a wrench into what everybody was thinking, that Pittsburgh was the place for him, when Aaron Rodgers said this.
I don't have any leaks. I have a very tight circle. I'm not out there putting shit out just to put shit out. That's just not how I operate. There's been a lot of people assuming they have information about me that's just not true. I've been straight up with these teams from the start about where I was at, starting with the money thing. I told every single one of the teams I talked to, it ain't about the money. I'll play for 10 M's. I don't care. I never once said I need a multi-year deal, $30, $40 million. That's absolute bullshit. I said I'd play for 10.
Okay, Tony Bell, $10 million. That's interesting how that exact figure came about, because if I recall, that's exactly what Sam Darnold played for last year. And that soundbite courtesy, again, Pat McAfee, ESPN, Aaron Rodgers, weekly hits on Tuesday. I want to thank them for that usage. But he also added in that same interview that him and KOC have been friends for a long time, that they've been talking. So we can't just move on from this, Tony. It's as if when I went on also doing a hit just to discuss this, it's almost like somebody knows something, that something's already done, and that this is just like a game he's having fun with the media, and that, unfortunately for you and many of us, that number 12 for the Minnesota Vikings could become a serious possibility, Tony.
As long as that idiot Pat McAfee has a show, Aaron Rodgers will have a podium to stand up there and run his mouth. I'm just being honest. First of all, Aaron, you're doing a rebrand tour because you came out the first time looking like a diva, talking about I don't put out rumors like that. Blah. You're the first one to put them out there. You're an excuse my language. You're an attention whore. So yeah, you're going to put them out there, and your people are going to put them out there. And the fact that you are ticked off at what the Jets did to you when they told you to come into the office, Aaron Glenn sat you down where you thought you were going to seriously talk about coming back, and he said, we're moving on from you. You didn't like that. So now this is your revenge tour.
Yes.
So you really only have technically two teams that are interested in you, Pittsburgh and Minnesota. Pittsburgh sounds like they've said, no, thank you. On the other hand, you've got the Minnesota Vikings who love attention. The front office does, no matter how they get it. You have an owner, and I say owner, that wants to relive 2009. You have a head coach who all he wants to do is coach, but he's not really being assertive and making JJ his guy. Usually you would be front and center and saying, this is our guy. This is where we're going. We're moving ahead with JJ McCarthy. We haven't heard that from this organization. We haven't heard that.
Exactly. We have not heard the clear definitive.
Right. And
JJ McCarthy's number one. They've implied.
Right.
That he's their guy and that he's the future of Vikings football.
And if I'm JJ, I'm a little perturbed.
Yeah, I think, JJ is in a situation where he's just ready to prove it. Like, he's ready to prove it. Whatever this is, Aaron can say whatever he wants. I kind of agree with you on this, Tony. Aaron, I think, feels a bit slighted because it's running out. The opportunity there, he's not being courted at this moment.
Well, this is another thing too. Aaron's not coming off an MVP year. Aaron's coming off one injured year, and then last year he looked even on a really bad Jets team, he looked average. He's not the same MVP that was in Green Bay.
He's 41 years old, Tony.
Yes.
And at this particular time, those opportunities are few and far between. Now, the Vikings might be in a situation where they can wait this out, go through their draft process, which we will talk about here. So, again, remember, answer the question, and we'll try to get to you here on the show, or we'll answer after the show. Who do you want to see the Minnesota Vikings pick with their first pick, or what position do you feel that they need? But as far as Aaron goes, I mean, the Vikings could just sit this out. There's no rush, right? They can wait till June 1st. Well, there'll probably be some more cuts because all the young quarterbacks that will be drafted will probably take another quarterback position away from some veteran. So, for an example, the guy brought up last month, Jimmy Garoppolo for the Rams. He's their backup to Matthew Stafford. Stafford's staying. Rams are probably going to draft a young quarterback to replace Stafford next year. Where does that leave Jimmy Garoppolo? Could be cut. If he's cut, he could be a guy that the Vikings get. He's a veteran. He wins a lot of games. Could be a smart play for less money. But the Vikings are sitting pretty in this position. You look at the other team, Pittsburgh. Tomlin's not going to stick around and wait for Aaron Rodgers to make his mind. Sorry. They brought Rudolph back. They're going to probably draft a young quarterback, and they're not going to wait around. So really, Aaron Rodgers is probably a little butthurt because people are not slamming down his door to get him because it's not a hot commodity. And as he said, I'd play for $10 million. He probably still expects to get $20 or $30 million because he feels he's still that guy. But the NFL is telling you, Aaron, you're not. And you might have to take a backup role if you really want to continue to play, because where else are you going to go? Now, he could wait, Tony. A quarterback could get hurt in training camp. We've seen this before. Someone struggles in the beginning of the year, gets hurt. He could come in as a savior. There's always that option. He could go the media route. I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, you and I have been very clear on this point. It's time to start the future now.
And here's my thing too, and this is where Viking fans contradict themselves. This team for years has been clamoring. They want their quarterback of the future. They want your franchise quarterback of the future. Now you've got your franchise quarterback of the future, and the first thing out of their mouths are, we need to get a veteran quarterback.
It's just the trust factor. It's just I think the Christian Ponder thing damaged a lot of Viking fans, right? And you told me this, and I think there's information on this as well, that Ponder wasn't 100% healthy.
No, he even admitted he had a separated shoulder or something, and it never healed, and he was never the same after it, and we drafted him anyway. But 2011 was a bad year for quarterbacks in the first place.
It really was. There wasn't much. Right. There wasn't much there for the Vikings to get, even if they went with somebody else. So Locker was part of that draft. He didn't turn out to be anything. So it's a tough deal to try to get a quarterback to come in. We understand that comes with the territory. I mean, there's nothing giving. I think Viking fans are saying, "Hey, we need JJ to prove it." That's true. We
also, as Viking fans,
opportunity and make the most of it.
Also, as Viking fans, we did draft Teddy. We don't know what would have happened with Teddy if Teddy doesn't get hurt. Thanks a lot, Adrian Peterson. But you've got that stigma too. So you've got a quarterback now, and I'm telling you, JJ's the guy.
He's the one. I'm ready. I'm more excited for it because here's the deal. Aaron Rodgers is a stopgap. He's 41 years old. Even if you thought in your mind, hey, let's just go with him. Let's relive 2009 Brett Favre. And Aaron's, taken a team and won in a Super Bowl, which was how many years ago? Even with that mindset, JJ's the guy that's got more of an opportunity for longer term success. Yeah. And that's the goal, is to not just win maybe one, which in our franchise we know we've never seen, but the goal is to win multiple. And he gives you that opportunity because if he's as good as Jim Harbaugh says he is, if he's as good as Tom Brady thinks he's going to be, if he's as good as KOC, most importantly, thinks he can be, then he is a better option than Aaron Rodgers at 41 years old is right now, which makes it a moot point, Tony, and says that JJ should already be the number one quarterback, no matter who else is out there or is going to come in to be the veteran.
Right.
JJ is the guy. That's plain and simple.
And like I've said before, you've got to pound this into Viking fans. This team is not run by one person. It's a conglomerate. It's a board. So you might have two people on that board that are ready to move on with JJ McCarthy. We pretty much know who those two people are. But you've got one huge voice on that board that is pounding the table for Rodgers. You've got one. We need to talk about this later too, because I think a lot of people don't know this of what's going on with the team.
Ooh, that's a tease right there. So let's get back to that. So then it leads to the question, Tony, if we are going to anoint JJ as the number one, are you worried though that the Vikings are waiting to get QB2, or does it really, we're maybe making too much of it, and maybe the Vikings are just being patient to see what comes down the pike after June 1st?
I think if you're KOC and Kwesi, you got to be patient because, first of all, like we've said before, KOC has built a culture with this team, and he's built that locker room with that culture. You bring in Aaron Rodgers, starter or not, he could be a cancer. Yeah. He's been known to step in the locker rooms and just be a
Well, he's going to get a lot of attention, and some people might get jealous.
Yeah, he's going to take eyes off of young guys. He's going to take eyes off of JJ. He's going to take eyes off of Aaron Jones and the other young players we have. This is a young team. It's getting older real fast, but right now it's the key players are younger. Does Aaron Rodgers guarantee you a Super Bowl? No. Does he even guarantee you a division? No. Aaron Rodgers, the last 2 years, as far as arm strength goes, his arm has not been the same in probably 3-4 years. He has lost a little bit of that ability he had.
And that's only to be natural. I mean, that's what happens.
And that's what happens as we get older. We're going to lose it. And it ain't like he's got the greatest workout regimen in the offseason anyway. I mean, so... And it comes with the territory, but you've got a young kid there. Yeah, you're going to have growing pains with them, but that's to be expected. If all these other teams can go with growing pains, the Washingtons, the Denvers, whoever else can start a young quarterback, why can't the Minnesota Vikings?
Yeah, and it was pretty successful last year, too.
Yeah.
When you look
Chicago's doing it right now with a young quarterback.
They are, and they're putting people around him to make him better. And that's
right.
And that's kind of what the Vikings have started this offseason, right? I mean, Darnold was the stopgap. Darnold took a beating last year.
Yeah.
And JJ, because of his injury, JJ would have started. I really still think JJ would have started last year if he was healthy. But now JJ gets an opportunity to go behind an improved offensive line. He's going to have weapons that normal top quarterbacks don't have, right? Like Bo Nix didn't have what JJ is going to have. You could argue Daniels didn't have what JJ is going to have to start off. And certainly we know Drake May doesn't have
Drake,
what JJ
poor Drake. Right? I mean, my God.
Which is the best wide receiver in the National Football League, a pretty good tight end core, and a veteran stud running back in Aaron Jones. So he's going to have a lot of things to help him through this process.
And JJ, you're going to notice something, folks. JJ is a competitor. We haven't had a real competitive quarterback probably since Tommy Kramer?
I think so. I think T. Gunn was the last guy that you really had that you just felt like you could see it on his face. Like the only thing Tommy wanted to do was
Tommy
win.
was going to throw 4 interceptions and maybe 2 touchdowns, but that one of those 2 touchdowns would be the game winner.
That's right. With 2 minutes or less.
And you're gonna get that with McCarthy.
He has that same kind of guile. He has that same kind of ferocity to him. I mean, he has to because he grew up playing hockey, and hockey is probably, if football is not the toughest sport, hockey certainly is, because you have to have a certain mindset.
Hockey, okay, you're getting knocked on solid ice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Against a board. You've got to be a different type of you got to be a different
power puck shot at your legs. Yeah,
exactly.
There's a certain toughness that comes with being a hockey player. And he went to a school where his head coach, Jim Harbaugh, was a tough competitor, and JJ had to be tough, and he was, and he proved late in games, right? Kind of like Tommy Kramer. He proved late in games in college that he could make the big pass, he could make the big play, and that he could produce. Now, Jim Harbaugh said, and this is the other side, which I think Viking fans are saying, well, we didn't see him throw the ball a lot. We didn't see him, progress so much as a passer. Well, that's because his head coach, Jim Harbaugh, didn't want him to, and it wasn't part of the game plan. And
Harbaugh coached old school football. Harbaugh wanted a balanced attack.
Yes.
So, and I'm sorry for people that you can tell the generation that grew up on Madden football, all they want to do is throw. Guess what? You got to run the ball to be successful. And guess who proved that last year? The Super Bowl champion Eagles.
Yeah.
You got to run the ball.
You got to have 2 sides of the equation too.
Yes.
2 good lines.
And we've got now this,
there, right? Vikings are getting there.
Yeah. And the Vikings you upgraded the line, and now you've got Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. And if you draft another running back, you got a pretty good running game there, but you've got to also have a QB. You also got to have a coach that is willing to do that. And at times we've seen KOC abandon the run for no reason. He's had success and he will abandon the run. I don't know what that is, but you got to stick with it. Bottom line.
I want KOC to be more like Mr. Sean McVay. I want him to be more like McVay. McVay opens things up. Yes, he beats you with a passing game and uses shifting offenses, but he believes in running the football. You run the football.
And Lord knows KOC can't beat McVay. So
no, we know that.
Yeah,
we know that. He needs to take a little bit out of that playbook. Now, in defense of KOC, he wasn't really confident about the offensive line. We know that the interior of the offensive line was a boob squad last year. They couldn't get 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1s to save their life. They couldn't score when the ball was deep in the other team, like that Detroit game week 16, when we were begging them to score a touchdown running the football. They couldn't do it, and basically KOC just had them pass, and that's just the way it is, right?
He had success running the ball, but then as soon as he has that success, he goes back to passing, and that was a bad night for Darnold. You see Darnold having this bad night.
Got to keep.
Why can't you make adjustments?
Yeah. Akers had a big run. I mean, there was times in that game, when we go back to the Lions game, last game of the year for the NFC North title, there were opportunities there. It's just you have to be able to run the football, the short yardage to gain by the goal line. You got to be able to score. Now there's no excuses for that anymore. And
here's another thing too, and and I'll just leave this here. KOC was here 3 years.
Yeah.
Did nothing with that offensive line. They knew the offensive line was going to be a problem, and they did not. They just plug and play.
So Yeah, when we look at this roster, Tony, now, and we've just talked about, obviously, and some improvements that they made. If I was to ask you before we start getting into a little draft discussion, if I was to say to you right now, you look at this Vikings roster, it looks pretty good on paper. There's a few holes. Every team has a few holes. But what would you identify, Tony, as the strength of the Minnesota Vikings going into the 2025 draft? And if there's a weakness or a position that might need upgrading, what are you looking at? What do you think right now when you say Vikings still need to tweak this a little bit, or I'd like to see this happen?
Depending on how Christian Darrisaw comes back from injury, it's the offensive line. Where they still need the help, linebacker. We seem awfully thin at linebacker and maybe cornerback, running back, but we're real thin at linebacker.
So you're saying that you're worried about Van Ginkel. So you don't think Dallas Turner's ready to kind of be that guy for Van Ginkel, or say, Grenard on the other side?
No, I think he is. My problem is
Eric Wilson. Now, Eric Wilson's a guy that could go in the middle for Blake Cashman, or, I think the area, I think you and I, we've agreed that we're a little worried, if we want to call it a weakness or not, is Ivan Pace is so small.
That's the problem.
And he gets eaten up on blocks, and I mean, he's fast and he makes plays behind the line of scrimmage. I really
he's fast and athletic, but he's not. I'm sorry, when you need a banger in there, it's not him.
Yeah, so maybe Wilson. Maybe they'll utilize Wilson. Maybe the Wilson will come in and be a guy that they use. He's a little bit bigger. Vikings have had him obviously before. He's returning to Minnesota. Could be an area. I mean, that could be an area that we see them look at somewhere. We know that there's two positions that Flores really, really cares about in part of his defense, and one would be linebacker and the other would be safety. Those are two things that he requires in his defense. So if he does believe, like you're saying, Tony, that position needs to be strengthened, I think he will. For me, looking at this roster, I think an obvious strength is the wide receiving core because of Justin Jefferson. I mean, Justin Jefferson elevates it just because of himself. But then you also have an equally amazing route runner in Jordan Addison, who should be utilized more, and I think he will be. We don't know what his situation is going to be, if he will have a 3-game suspension that could weaken it going into the season. But I would be surprised if, with the money that they have left, if there's not another receiver, either a veteran that's coming in, Amari Cooper, or someone of that sort will come in and be that protection. Or, we'll get to it in just a moment, it could be a position that the Vikings decide to address on Thursday night. So to me, wide receivers a strength. A weakness to me, well, I think Mason will help the running game to help Aaron Jones out. I don't know what that means for Ty Chandler. I would assume Ty's probably going to get a pink slip somewhere down the line, and the Vikings will either
I'm sorry, they never really gave him the poor guy.
They really didn't. That's on the Vikings. Yeah. That really is. I think Ty Chandler has talent. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
They're not either that or KFC's not utilizing him properly, like getting him to his strengths, which would be nice to see. But that could be, I mean, depending on what happens there, that could be a situation they address. But for me, a weakness, Tony Bell, and it might be something that they've already fixed, is the secondary, is the cornerback position per se, only because I know Murphy's back. I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see what Rodgers is going to be. I think he could be very, very good. Blackman's coming off an injury. We saw some problems that he had in coverage in that Cincinnati game. I can't get that out of my mind from 2 years ago when he was just standing around and watching a touchdown happen. I don't know what the hell that was. So Blackman still has a lot of learning to do. And there's some other interesting names that they have. They brought in Aduka from a former first-round pick who's sort of been a bust so far, but he's got size. Maybe Flores can kind of rejuvenate his career.
Oh, I forgot they had Jeff Okudah.
And they have McLaughlin, who's a UDFA, a guy I like, but, again, you don't know what to expect. I would like someone to either come back. I asked you this question. Shaq Griffin played, I think, very well for the Minnesota Vikings last year. I thought he played about as well as you could. Veteran presence, didn't really get beat often last year. I think he had a really good statistic keeping quarterback ratings below 70 or somewhere in that area. There's also a guy that's considered a top 20 cornerback, Tony, in the NFL. I don't know. I'm not sure why he's out there still in free agency, though. Maybe there's something there to it. But Asante Samuel Jr., who's only 26 years of age, maybe he wants too much money. I don't know. But there is footage of him wearing a Vikings hat dancing, okay? And if you go to Wikipedia right now, Asante Samuel Jr. is apparently a member of the Minnesota Vikings. So I don't know. Again, sometimes Wiki's wrong. Maybe he's just a fan of the Vikings. I don't want to read into it. But it almost seems like there might be something in place there. And if so, I'd feel that would be a stronger position with a veteran like Griffin or Samuel than to trying to rely on a draft pick to come in there in their first year, Tony. What's your thoughts about that?
I'm a defensive guy, so I'd sign Samuels before I sign Rodgers. Depending on who they get in the secondary. Remember, this is Harrison Smith's last year.
Yeah.
So they're going to need a safety, so they could address that.
They could. I mean, they could. But I think, Theo Jackson's a guy, obviously, I think is going to get more opportunity, and Flores absolutely loves him. So maybe we don't see it. Maybe we're a little worried about it. But whatever Theo does, either in practice or on tape, is what Mr. Flores wants. So you're going to see a lot more of him. You're going to see Metellus get more of an opportunity. I think Harrison Smith, to be honest with you, Tony, is probably going to be used at a certain snap count. I don't think you're going to see him out there all the time, which then would lead you to believe that either the Vikings think Jay Ward's about ready to take a step up, and he was a young guy drafted at LSU. He's got a lot of good tape. Okay, so maybe this is a chance for him to step up, or maybe they do go out and look at what happens after June 1st to address it, bring another safety in, or could it be that is an area in which the Vikings will address in the draft? And when I look at it, and let's just segue into it, so we're going to do our little draft thing here, Tony. There's a couple guys I think that would fit that bill, that would fit that safety guy for the future, right? Because this is his last year. Let's just be honest. There's no next year. I think this is it. But Malachi Starks from Georgia is a guy that's rated highly. I know that gets you a little worried, right, Tony? When you say Georgia safety, you just can't help it. And this is no offense, because Starks is a completely different player, but we immediately think Lewis Cine. And it just unfortunately, we're not going to get that out of our.
The problem with the Lewis Cine thing was you traded down twice to get him.
Yeah, and we didn't draft Kyle Hamilton, which probably would mean we wouldn't have a safety issue now.
Yeah, and Hamilton was there. Hamilton was there when you picked, but you chose to move down. And I think that was the Vikings, once again, the front office.
They didn't want to pay the money from the slot.
They didn't want to pay the money.
Lower. Yeah, they wanted to go lower. That's something that I'm sure they've learned from, and we'll make that mistake again. The other guy is the kid from South Carolina. I've seen tape on him. He's big. Nick Amanawari, 6'3". He's 220. I kind of see that. I see Flores liking 6'3", 220, Tony, because he can come down in the box, I'm going to imagine, and be utilized in – I don't know what Nick's speed rate is or his propensity to blitz, but at 6'3", 220, you're talking about a quasi linebacker roaming back there. And I'm sure it's not fun if he hits you over the middle. So those two guys could be guys, Tony, that the Vikings look at. But in your estimation, do the Minnesota Vikings, with pick number 24 on the clock, do they move up? I think there's a very slim chance of that. I'm going to put 15% at that. Do they move down, or do they do what we mentioned earlier in the show? Do they stay there and take best available player? I mean, what is your thought process if you were Kwesi, thinking of what you need, and we just talked about the team's strengths and the team's weakness. If you take best available player, it might be a position of strength. You might not need that, right? But that player is on your list higher than anyone else. So what would be your strategy? And who, if you have the 24th pick, are you going to stay, trade down? Let me know here. You're the GM right now of the Minnesota Vikings. Tony Bell, the floor is yours.
Okay, it's very simple. If Gray Zabel, Derek Harmon, and Kenneth Grant are gone, I'm trading down.
Okay. So you have 3 guys that you feel fit the Vikings perfectly.
Yeah, and if they're not there, I'm trading down.
And you're stockpiling picks.
Yep.
I think that really is probably, it kind of makes this draft for the Vikings maybe not as exciting, because I think you're right. I think they have 2 or 3 players. I think one of these safeties is probably on that list. And if that safety is picked before them, if Zabel's picked before they pick, which very well could happen.
Right.
If Harmon's picked, could be the second defensive tackle after Graham. Harmon could be the second defensive tackle picked. That's another guy we've heard attached to the Vikings. Where does that put the Vikings? Now, if it is best available player, if it is a scenario in which you feel like you can't pass up, if I told you one of the receivers falls, one of the guys that is considered a top 5, top 10 pick, I'm going to use the kid from Arizona, McMillan. I don't see it. I think he's one of the top 10 picks in this draft, even though he said he doesn't want to watch film. This kid's as close to Puka Nacua as you've ever seen. This guy is that guy. He falls, and we've seen it happen. Wasn't it? What was it, Tony? 24th pick in, what was the year again? Some kid from Marshall fell when there was Jake Reed and Chris Carter.
He was 19. He was 18 or 19. He's 19.
Oh, was it 19? Okay. But he fell, right? And kind of fell right into our
lap.
He
fell because of a knock on his attitude.
If McMillan has that knock, could be another repeat scenario. You could have what many people other than Travis Hunter put as the number 1 receiver in this year's draft fall into your lap. And it would also make sense only because we're not certain where Jordan Addison in that suspension is going to fall. Could be 2 games, could be 3 games. Hopefully they forget about it and have lost it.
It sounds like the court system is giving them a literal slap on the wrist.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
We take this need out of the equation, right?
I mean, if the
receivers, there's still
NFL
receivers
wants to be jerks about it, they'll probably suspend them a couple of games.
There's still receivers out there in free agency that could be a target for the Vikings. I mean,
here's the thing: wide receiver in today's football is a dime a dozen. You don't have to spend big to get a above average receiver, one that will be consistent.
Let me kind of play another scenario for you. The best tight end in this year's draft. There's 2 guys that have been mentioned. One guy's the Penn State kid that I've seen as high as the top tight end. I've seen him fall. The guy that's rated number 1 is the kid from Michigan, which is interesting because he'd know J.J. McCarthy. His name is Colston Loveland.
Colston Loveland, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like his name.
Can he block?
Listen, if he's from Michigan, I'm going to assume he can block. I'm going to assume it's like that.
He's going to be gone. He's going to be gone.
Well, he could be, but I mean, I'm just saying there's scenarios where guys are going to fall, right? So maybe someone else has Mason Taylor ahead of Loveland. I don't know. Or one of the other tight ends, Arroyo, or the kid from Bowling Green is rated high. What I'm saying is if one of those guys that you didn't think was going to be there falls to you, the best thing for the Vikings is he could be the best available player. You can just pick him. And if something happens to TJ Hawkinson, or if he does not assume his abilities in which he had prior to that devastating knee injury he suffered in Detroit, then you have a guy that hopefully can replace him. And they still have Josh Oliver on the roster. I just want to make sure everyone knows that, because Josh Oliver is, I think, a very, very good tight end. And he's the best blocking tight end the Vikings have. That's for sure. But again, it leaves you open to possibly get one of those guys. Now, you know this. I've said this all along. If I'm on the clock, I might even trade up for this guy. I might trade up for him just to make sure. But I think that the Minnesota Vikings need to draft tackle/guard from North Dakota State.
Gray Zabel.
Give me Gray Zabel.
Yeah.
And I'm going to explain to you just simply why I want him more than any other player in this draft. He's mean. He looks a lot like Ryan Kelly and Mike Fries. He looks he would fit in perfectly with those guys. He's mean. He's versatile, Tony.
Yeah.
If Derisaw's not ready, and we don't know how that knee's going to – and Derisaw gets hurt anyways. We've seen him.
He gets hurt a lot.
Concussions. You can move Zabel right into that spot. And then you have Brando go back to left guard. Maybe they sign – I think you were telling me prior to the show, Dalton Reisner might be coming back.
Reisner's name has come up. He's got it. It's between Minnesota, Denver, and Cincinnati.
So, that might change again. If they do bring Reisner, this might make this a moot point. But at the same time, you never have – enough good offensive linemen. Zabel's a guy which could be there to take over for O'Neal when O'Neal's deal is up, because he's also over 30, and you could start him on the right.
He's got a huge cap hit this year. Huge.
So it could even mean that you move Zabel into that spot now. And unfortunately, I don't want to see this happen, but it could mean flexibility and basically clearing.
You also have you drafted him last year, Walter Rouse. Rouse is offered to work at guard.
I like it. I think this is exciting for us to sit here, Tony, right? Mm-hmm. On April 18th and sit there and say there's a lot of good young players for the Vikings offensive. Like the offensive line now, I can't wait to watch those games on Sunday in the fall when the offensive line is mauling people. This is what we're talking about. And that's why I think Gray Zabel would be the perfect pick for Minnesota, because he's a mauler. He's a technician, though, but he's a mauler, and he's 6'6", 315.
Zabel is a Viking. Zabel is day one starter.
Day one starter.
Yep.
Where else are you going to get that? Think of that offensive line for a rookie quarterback, right? Other than a really solid running game, what's the second most important thing? Protecting him. The best offensive line. And also having a big tight end. Obviously, TJ and Josh Oliver are going to be huge for JJ. But Gray Zabel just, to me, kind of makes the most sense, Tony. I just feel that. But, again, I don't know. Could they draft a running back? Could it be a position which falls to them? Maybe Hampton from North Carolina falls into their lap, or something of that magnitude happens. The good thing in what we're saying here tonight on the show is that the Vikings have flexibility. They have an opportunity to take whatever makes sense. They are not locked into or forced to make a decision. They could draft whatever they feel is the best guy on the board.
Yeah.
They could trade down, stockpile more picks, because the area in which this draft, remember before the free agency, we were like, okay, we feel a little bit relieved because the position that the Vikings need help with, right, before the free agent signings was offensive line, defensive tackle, right, and running back. And, the Vikings took care of that with some free agents, a trade, so forth. But those positions are still very deep in this draft. And they don't need to use a first-round pick. They could trade down to the second round. And one of the offensive linemen could be Tyler Booker falls, could still be there. Or another stud offensive lineman is there that you could plug and play. Or you could go running back. The kid from Ohio State, Henderson, which he looks like a guy that would fit right into KOC's offense. And the other area where Henderson's really, really good, Tony, is he's a great blocking back. And that's important with a young quarterback like JJ. You put Henderson out there on third down, and he can block blitzes and help JJ out. And he's also a very, very good runner and a good receiver, which fits the offense. So there's a lot of things that the Vikings can do. It's an exciting time. So we want to know here on the show, before we wrap this up, who is the guy that you most want to see the Vikings draft, or the position you think is in need as the Vikings get ready for the 2025 NFL draft on Thursday night? Anything else, Tony, before we wrap up here? Anything that you have on your mind that you want to throw out there, or something we get to our final thoughts here?
No question. When's the schedule?
Yeah, good question, right?
Yeah, that's
they're playing. I think that comes out. Is that after the draft?
Used to be before the draft.
That's a great question. That's a really good question. If anyone knows, let us know here. If you know when the schedule is out, right?
Because right now, I'll tell you what. if we don't have number 12/8 on the team, we might not get too many national TV games.
Isn't that crazy to think that though, Tony? Yeah. They won 14 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
They made the playoffs, and they probably won't have many national games. The fact is, they will judge the Vikings. First of all, they're a Midwest team, and second of all, they have a rookie quarterback. As much as you and I love JJ McCarthy, the networks don't view him as highly as they would if Aaron Rodgers.
And don't forget, they had the Vikings the last regular season game of the year. The Vikings looked bad, and then in that playoff game, they looked bad.
Right.
You lost to the Rams twice on national TV.
Yep.
The only team you beat on national TV was the Colts without Richardson.
Yeah, and Flacco started that game.
Started, and honestly, we didn't look the best.
Didn't look that game either. No, they're not. They haven't, and we've known this for a few years now. The Vikings have not been a big-time performer on national primetime games.
Were the Packers on national TV?
I would have to look. I'd have to look that up, but they probably will be. The Packers have a little bit more.
Well, no, we beat the Bears. We beat the Bears in the whiteout game.
Yeah, that's right.
We beat the Bears in the whiteout game. And personally, I don't care to see those uniforms again. But
no, you don't like the whiteout uniform?
You know what? I don't. Did not. I mean, it's too high school.
It's going to be interesting because teams now have the ability to have. Did I see that right? 3 uniforms or 4 uniforms?
You can have 4. You can have 4.
So you can have a new modern one. You could have the throwback, and then you can have obviously the home and away. So adding 2 uniforms, it'll be interesting to see.
I think teams. You know what teams should do if you're going to bring back if you got your throwback home uniform, have your throwback away uniform.
Why not? Why not? I mean, this. Like we've said this before. Like the coolest throwback uniforms, the Seahawks. Really, really good looking uniforms. Buccaneers, really, really good uniforms. And it's like to the point where why haven't the Buccaneers the uniform? I know they've won 2 Super Bowls, whatever.
That's the only reason.
But those uniforms are hideous.
I know.
They're really bad.
I know. They don't bring back the creamsicle because of what it represents.
Right.
But that was
they did make an NFC Championship game once upon a time in those unis. People might have forgotten about that. Good old Doug Williams and Ricky Bell.
I mean,
John McKay. Okay.
Yeah, so, Leroy Selman. I mean,
I love the Falcons throwbacks. Are really cool. I like the Kelly Green Eagles.
The only reason their green is the color it is now is because Jeff Lurie's girlfriend, now wife, I guess, wanted a darker green uniform.
Is that why they don't have the Kelly green?
That's why they don't have the Kelly green.
Those are hot, man. Those were good looking unis.
That's why they don't. But see, they won 2 Super Bowls in these current.
And now those uniforms are attached to success. So why change? Yeah. They don't have to. Though most of these teams are looking for extra merch sales, so they'll have some.
Nike's making. I mean, don't be surprised, folks, with the way Nike does college uniforms. They do that with the NFL.
Ooh. I mean, just the Broncos, like those were hideous. The white thingy.
The Broncos can't get.
I mean, can't go back to the orange.
The
orange crush days.
Yeah,
the helmet.
It's not
complicated.
It's not rocket science.
No, it's not. So we wrap this up. Tony will be doing a draft show, and from what I understand, when we do the draft show, someone's going to be inside US Bank Stadium. I've heard this through a grapevine. I don't know. Would you like to tell the audience where you're going to be? You're going to be there partying and being there for the pick selection.
I received free tickets, so I will be there on Thursday, hanging out with all the other Viking fans and seeing what we do in the first round. Although I really don't think we trade down.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? You go?
Yeah, Thursday? The year I go, we trade down. The last draft.
Here's the thing. This is what Kwesi, Kwesi probably does. They trade to the 31st, right? Or 32nd over Kansas City, right?
Right.
And then you're like, well, at least I get to see a pick. And then you get, the Minnesota Vikings have traded out of the first round into the second round with the New England Patriots. But that's okay because then we're getting more picks. It's a deep draft.
And honest to God, folks, I haven't been to a draft party because of the draft. I haven't been to a draft party since 2001.
Wow.
So I was at Mall of America when the Vikings announced that they drafted Michael Bennett.
Wisconsin great Michael Bennett.
Oh my! And it was just, we all had that look on our faces like, who?
They got their card in on time, correct? I mean, that's
the card was in on
Vikings got to worry
time.
about the card being there on a timely fashion.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like Michael Bennett. So now going Thursday, I think they trade down.
I kind of do too. I do. I just think it's just they only have 4 picks. Although, who knows? Maybe that's with all the guys that they've added, Tony, and the Vikings being really good at UDFA. There is no need. They could just take the best available player. Go to UDFA to fill out some holes if they need to. The training camp guys, maybe get a diamond in the rough. Ivan Pace kind of guy, John Randall, Adam Thielen. They've done it many times before, so they could do that, and go extra heavy on that. But for my final thought on this show and just looking ahead, it just gets to this, Tony. We've waited so very long, right? And sure, Aaron Rodgers is is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I've got to meet Aaron a couple times. Always treated me really nice guy. Got some pictures with him, and he did shows for us before he asked for $1 million in appearance on Pat McAfee show. It's a nice gig if you can get it, right? $1 million in appearance. Good for Aaron. Heck yeah. Cash in for your time. But the time is now, Tony. Let's not be afraid of the rookie quarterback, so to speak, of jumping in the fire with somebody that I think, and we've said this all along, that I think we were very fortunate to get last year, that I think has all the makings of what we wanted the Vikings quarterback to be. Now, we've been very fortunate. Vikings had Fran Tarkenton, no doubt the number 1 quarterback in Vikings history. We got to see Tommy Kramer, my favorite quarterback. Terrific guy. We've seen Dante Culpepper. We've seen, obviously, we talked about the recycled bin that we went through. Jim McMahon, Gus Frerotte. I mean, you could call Brett Favre a recycled bin guy, right? Warren Moon. God bless. One of the prettiest passes you'll ever see in the game of football, Warren Moon. So they've done that recycled thing. We've done it. This kid is ours. We stamped him with the highest pick we've ever given a quarterback in our franchise history. It is his time. Make no mistake of it. This is J.J. McCarthy. In McCarthy, we trust. And why should you ease your burden, your mindset? Oh, he's a rookie quarterback. He's this. He's not. He doesn't throw the ball enough. Well, watch the tape. Look with your own eyes. You know what happens? When J.J. McCarthy goes on a football field, right? Right? Doesn't matter what the stats are. Remember a quarterback in Vikings history, Joe Kapp? Remember what he used to do when he would go out on the field? He won.
Yeah.
Kapp won.
Couldn't throw a spiral for his life, but he could win.
Was a winner. Who cares how the pass looked?
Yep.
That guy gave you his body. Okay? He would punch you in the face to get an extra yard and get a victory for your team. Yep. And that's what this kid is. J.J. McCarthy is a winner. Go look at the stats. I think the kid's only lost 3 times on a competitive playing field. Team sports, 3 times. 66 wins. National championship. High school championship. Hockey championship. All he does is win. He wins. We've got him. The future is now because, unfortunately, Tony, as I head to my birthday week next week, okay, you just had yours here.
Yeah.
Right? We've gone around the sun. There's only a few more times.
Well, I had mine in October.
All right. It seemed like it was a lot sooner. All right.
Yeah.
Over. I got April coming up here next week, gentlemen. All right. So as we have less and less opportunity to sit there and watch our football franchise that in over 60 years has not completed the task. The Vikings are closer today. And I'm going to say this, put a smile on everyone's face as we wrap it up. Wish you a happy Easter, happy Good Friday to all you out there celebrating. Next week's going to be an exciting time for us because we're going to add some new players as well. But This is the time. JJ McCarthy is it. He has it.
Yes, he does.
He's a winner. And our time is coming. And it needs to start now. Not next year. Not the year after. Who knows if we're all here. God willing.
Exactly.
Now. Right now, Tony Bell. And that's the exciting part of it, right? I mean, this team is built. This team is absolutely built to do it. They've got talent on every side of the ball. We've got one of the best, if not the best, defensive coordinator. We have one of the best offensive minds coaching our team. Okay? This team is built for it. And now we got the quarterback. We got whoop, 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 whoop. Get out there, win games, win a championship. It's going to happen. And I think not once, I'm not going to do the LeBron thing, but at least twice.
Jesus.
I'm not going to do – remember that? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Not once, not twice, not three times. I was like, okay, whatever, LeBron, okay? You needed Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to get that done.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? But this team is there, Tony Bell. Let's enjoy the weekend. We will be back with you next week. Tony will be heading to the draft. And thank you, yes, Quality Control. Birthday on Monday. I'm not telling you how old I am. Hopefully
Old enough.
I look younger. I look younger than I am. I don't know. Not sure about that, Chief. But birthday's coming up next week. I want to wish you all happy Easter. And as always, Tony Bell, we say this before we leave.
Skol.
Thanks for watching. Stay tuned next week for our draft special. Our very own Tony Bell will be live at the draft. Get all the latest news and notes right here on our official Purple SKOL Squad Show page for Minnesota Vikings fans. Skol!